Werner Hoyer, thank you for coming. Good to have you back at
Pleasure.
the Institute. I know you've been here many times, but in this capacity, we should be aware of the fact that you're here as the head of the EIB. And the European Investment Bank is one of the biggest banks in the world, if I'm not mistaken. It's even bigger than the World Bank, right? But an enormous responsibility for investment in Europe and in the EU and the 28 members at the moment, soon to be 27. So let me dive right in there. How does Brexit affect the bank's work? Some of that money that you get from the members come from the 28 members. Does that impact you at all? And secondly, does it change your policy? Does it have anything of an impact in terms of what the bank is trying to do?
I believe that after the terrible outcome of the referendum in the United Kingdom, the European Union should think about how to proceed in the future, how to do business and how to explain it to the people. Business as usual cannot be the name of the game anymore after this decision. Of course, the European Union and its bank, the EU bank, are deeply affected by potential Brexit.
How so, Werner? How is it?
Well, the United Kingdom is one of the largest shareholders. They hold 16% of the shares, same percentage as Italy, France, and Germany each. So that is of importance. There must be some settlement for this because according to the statutes, only a member state of the European Union can be shareholder of the bank. Unless the statutes are changed, they will be out. This has to be dealt with by a replacement of that capital share or by redistribution or by shrinking of the bank. That is not so dramatic. Dramatic is the fact that we have a very good portfolio in the United Kingdom, very good loans there. We are very important for the United Kingdom because there is no comparable national promotional bank in the UK like KfW in Germany or CDC in France or CDP in Italy. So we are playing a little bit also a compensation for a lack of a national promotional bank in the UK very successfully, in particular in areas which are of prime importance for the United Kingdom and for Europe. Energy efficiency, financing of innovation, financing of health services and things like that. So we are a very dynamic partner for the United Kingdom, and it would be a shame to end this.
But it may not be avoidable. We don't know yet how that is going to unfold. We're in uncharted territory, right?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, we will probably see the Article 50 procedure triggered by the United Kingdom government and Parliament. It takes a Parliament approval to make that step.
Right.
And after that, we will negotiate for 2 years or more, and probably the question of the bank is going to be at the end of the negotiations and not at the beginning. So you can imagine that not only for our investors, but also for our British staff, it is a very unpleasant situation because also, again, a staff member of the EIB can only be somebody who has the passport of a member state of the European Union. So it's a difficult situation that we are going to have
all the way around. Yeah, I can imagine. Let me just stick with one dimension of that. Obviously, you're here in Washington, you're talking to people about what's going on the other side of the Atlantic. There are some concerns, and maybe you can say that they're not justified, that this Brexit is a tip of the iceberg or a domino effect that could roll around Europe for years to come. Many people were suggesting that, someone else might have a referendum like the Dutch or others that would look for this way of renegotiating their positions vis-a-vis Brussels. Are you afraid of that contagious disease?
No. I must say that I observe attentively the twinkling in the eyes of some people here, but it's exactly those who have never believed in the European project. And so there might also be some wishful thinking behind it. I believe that this, in my view, a really regrettable decision of the majority of the British people who voted can also serve as a wake-up call. Europe must explain better what it's doing. It has to limit itself to certain areas where European action is really needed, but there it must move forward with ambition. The common market is not completed. We have an atomized digital market in Europe. We have a separated energy market in big parts of Europe.
Right.
So all these things are carrying a huge potential of productivity increase if we integrate more deeply, while in other fields we might get away with a little bit less integration because decisions are better taken on the national, regional, or local level. So from that point of view, I believe there is a big chance to look at the real challenges of Europe in the global context. We have been concentrating on crisis management for the last 10 years in Europe. We have been dealing with peer reviews within the European Union. We have not compared ourselves, as far as productivity is concerned, for instance, with the strongly developing nations in Asia or North America. So this is going to be reversed, I'm quite sure, and that we will have to be very sober in analyzing where is our position in the globalizing world, where are our deficits when it comes to innovation, to the digitalization, to the entry into the fourth stage of the Industrial Revolution. If that wake-up call is well understood and taken seriously, then there is a chance in the situation as well.
You would then, however, probably direct that message to 27 governments, not just Brussels, right? Not just Mr. Juncker, but the 27 governments that are responsible for explaining their policies and their European mission and vision to 27 different populations.
Yeah, 27 different governments and parliaments must ask themselves whether their strategy has been the right one over the last 2 decades, to say that everything that works in Europe is due to the fantastic ingenuity of our national leaders, while everything that might go wrong or not so well is to be attributed to the bureaucrats in Brussels. That is the zero-sum game thinking that has taken place for too long in Europe. That must be overcome. We must, again, get a comprehension of the European integration process of something more than a zero-sum game.
Is there I'm going to ask you this as a German now, Werner, if I may. Is there in this path, in the wake of Brexit, an unintended or maybe just simply an unavoidable enhanced role that Berlin then must assume in making what you just say happen in terms of being a leader of such a missionary effort to rekindle the flame of the European movement?
Well, obviously, the European citizens do not feel an overflow of leadership. So there is a leadership gap, and this leadership gap must be filled. And with the United Kingdom leaving, my German countrymen are losing one of their best allies when it comes to promoting productivity, free trade, and all these necessary things which you have to pursue if you want to be successful on the global scale. Therefore, I believe indeed that with the departure of the United Kingdom, the relative share of Germany, France, and Italy will increase. And with the economic potential of Germany, it is expected, of course, that a certain proactive role is being played. On the other hand, coming back to the leadership question, everybody is calling for stronger leadership, but nobody wants to be led. So it is something that has to be implemented very, very cautiously. People must rely upon the fact that for the last 60 years, consequently during the integration process in Europe, Germany never wanted to have a German Europe, but wanted to have a European Germany. And that must be the clear role for the future as well.
And that also, maybe in a final round here of questions for you to talk about, the business of making that happen was always in the early years of the EC and then the EU, in many ways driven by the relationship between Paris and Germany, or France and Germany. Can that now also be something that can potentially be revived if Brexit actually does go into effect? Does that mean that the Franco-German partnership becomes that much more, or again, totally instrumental in making that happen?
Well, historically, strategically, this relationship is of key importance. But on the other hand, I must say that in the complexity of the networks in Europe, one must underestimate the importance of other partnerships. I mean, for instance, if you look at the integration process and its developments since the talks between De Gasperi and Adenauer in the late 40s, all the way to the treaties of Rome and the Conference of Messina before that, all the way to the treaty negotiations over the last decades, the Italian-German couple was of key importance, and it's always underestimated. Then you have seen how important the relationship between the United Kingdom and Germany used to be. And beyond all this, the success of German European policy has always been that we have been particularly attentive to the smaller nations in Europe. And that is something where I can give the advice to my countrymen only to continue on that path, because Europe cannot be built with a couple of big nations only.
You also have a number of important countries on the eastern frontier of the EU, some of which are not exactly in line with some of the thinking that's going on in Brussels. I'm thinking about the current tension between Brussels and Poland and to some extent with Budapest. But when they came in, they were an expansion of the Europe that everybody wanted to have, whole and free. Do you have any worries about what's happening on that side of the European Union?
I think these countries have gone a long way, and beyond differences of opinion that are obviously there and that are part of a process which we all have to go through together. I see with great interest that, for instance, Hungary is moving closer to the Eurozone again, at least rhetorically in the last couple of days and weeks. I see with great interest that the longing for referenda on EU membership has completely disappeared in all the other countries after the United Kingdom has taken the decision. Mm-hmm. Even in the Netherlands, has gone down to Mr. Wilders, while all the other parties are staying away from this idea. That has been quite a shock, what they have seen in the UK and after the referendum. So I think there might be many disagreements or misunderstandings between countries like Poland and parts of the western part of the European Union, but there is no desire in Poland to leave the European Union, not at all.
In that way, I think you answer a question that I always answer with when I'm talking to my American friends. You know, is there a concern that the European Union will fall apart by the seams? And I tend to think that 27, 28, whatever the number may be, there's too much at stake, and there's too many stakeholders in the European project for me to imagine that it would implode. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. There is no risk of implosion. And there is certainly no risk of explosion, but there is the hope for a wake-up call that really, hopefully, everybody hears.
A long time ago, one of your, not person that was at the EIB, but I think a leader of the European movement said, we're busy building many, many European institutions, but we don't forget we have to build Europeans. And that, I think, is the mission of both leaderships.
Exactly, and this is why I firmly believe in the necessity to define and to tell the new narrative of Europe. After 10 years of inward looking, after decades of rather a romantic view on European integration, let's very soberly analyze where do we stand in the world and how do we want to preserve our survival in a tough global competition. And then you have a new story about Europe, a story that you can tell to young people, because for them, the destination Europe is key.
And you're helping to write that as president of the EIB. Thank you for that, Dan.
Thank you.
Good to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.